Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the massive view screen that showed empty space ahead. But it wasn't really empty. His sensors picked up something strange, dozens of metal objects floating in the darkness, each one broadcasting the same message over and over. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from those beacons," reported Lieutenant Vex, his communication officer. She was a young Altarian with blue skin and silver eyes that reflected the bridge lights. "The message is being sent in 17 different languages." "Put it through the translator," Zektar ordered. He was a tall, imposing figure from the warrior planet Kethra. His people had served the Galactic Empire faithfully for over 1,000 years, and he took pride in expanding Imperial territory. The ship's computer worked quickly, analyzing each transmission. Soon, a clear message appeared on every screen, throughout the bridge. "Forbidden. Terran Quarantine Zone. Entry prohibited by Galactic Treaty 2387X. Violation will result in immediate response." Zektar frowned. In his 40 years of service to the Empire, he had never heard of any Galactic Treaty 2387X. The Empire kept detailed records of every agreement, every conquered world, every species they had encountered. Yet these beacons claimed authority over a vast region of space, nearly 50 star systems by his count. "Computer, search Imperial archives for Galactic Treaty 2387X, he commanded. "Searching. No records found," the computer responded in its mechanical voice. "Search for any reference to Terran Quarantine Zone." "Searching. No records found." This was impossible. The Galactic Empire had ruled most of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and absorbed dozens of alien civilizations. How could there be a treaty they knew nothing about? "Dr. Yelan, report to the bridge immediately," Zektar ordered through the ship's communication system. Dr. Yelan was the fleet's chief xenobiologist, an expert in alien languages and cultures. If anyone could make sense of this mystery, it would be her. She arrived within minutes, her tentacles moving nervously as she studied the message on the main screen. "Admiral, this is very strange," she said in her soft, musical voice. Her species, the Zilani, were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and analytical minds. The word Terran is not in our standard galactic languages database. "Then what does it mean?" Zektar asked. "I ran it through our archives of dead languages and extinct civilizations," Dr. Yelan explained, her tentacles dancing as she spoke. "Terran appears to be derived from an ancient human word, Terra. It means earth in their primitive language." Zektar's eyes widened. "Humans? But humans went extinct centuries ago." "According to our records, yes," Dr. Yelan confirmed. "They were a small, aggressive species that barely achieved faster-than-light travel before destroying themselves in a civil war. Their homeworld was obliterated in the conflict. There should be no trace of them left in the galaxy." The Admiral walked closer to the view screen, studying the ancient beacons. They looked old, very old. The metal was covered in strange markings that could have been there for thousands of years. But they were still functional, still broadcasting their warning message. "How old do you estimate these beacons to be?" he asked. Dr. Yelan consulted her scanner. "The metal composition suggests they've been here for at least 2,000 years, possibly longer. But Admiral, that's impossible." "Why?" "Because our records show that humans only achieved spaceflight about 800 years ago. They couldn't have built these beacons before they even left their planet." Zektar felt a chill run down his spine. Something was very wrong here. Either the Imperial records were incomplete or someone had been deliberately hiding information about this region of space. "Lieutenant Vex, send a message to Imperial Command," he ordered. "Tell them we've discovered an unmarked quarantine zone, with no corresponding records in our archives. Request immediate clarification." "Yes, sir," Vex replied, her fingers dancing over her control panel. While they waited for a response, Zektar studied the tactical display. The beacons formed a perfect perimeter around the 50 star systems, creating a barrier that no ship could cross without receiving their warning. Beyond the beacons, his long-range sensors detected something even more puzzling. "Sir, called out Ensign Torres from the sensor station. "I'm picking up artificial structures in several of the star systems beyond the barrier." "What kind of structures?" "Large orbital stations, sir, and what appear to be massive shipyards. But they're not showing any energy signatures. They seem to be dormant." Zektar moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. The structures were enormous, some of them larger than entire Imperial space stations. They orbited dead worlds in perfect formation, like sleeping giants, waiting to wake up. "Any signs of life?" he asked. "Negative, sir. No energy readings, no communications, no movement, but the structures are definitely artificial." A soft chime indicated an incoming message from Imperial Command. Lieutenant Vex looked confused as she read the response. "Sir, Command says they have no record of any quarantine zone in this sector. They're ordering us to investigate and report our findings." Zektar nodded slowly. The Empire never liked mysteries, especially ones that involved unknown technologies or potential threats. His orders were clear: find out what was behind those beacons and claim it for the Empire. But something nagged at him. The beacons weren't just warnings. They were promises. "Violation will result in immediate response," the message had said. Response from whom? From what? "Dr. Yilan, is there anything else you can tell me about humans?" he asked. The xenobiologist consulted her datapad. "They were a relatively young species, Admiral. They had only been exploring space for a few hundred years before their extinction. But what made them unusual was their adaptability. Humans could survive in almost any environment and learn new technologies very quickly." "Were they dangerous?" "All species can be dangerous under the right circumstances," Dr. Yilan replied carefully. "But humans had a reputation for being intense. They formed strong emotional bonds with their own kind, but they could also be remarkably violent when threatened. Their civil war was particularly brutal." Zektar studied the beacons again. If humans had built these warnings, what were they trying to keep out? Or more importantly, what were they trying to keep in? "Admiral," Lieutenant Vex interrupted his thoughts. "We're receiving another transmission." "From Imperial Command?" "No, sir, from one of the beacons. It's different from the warning message." "Put it through." This time the message was shorter and more direct. "Imperial vessel, you have lingered at the boundary for 4.7 hours. State your intentions or withdraw immediately." The bridge fell silent. The beacons weren't just playing recorded messages. Something was actively monitoring their presence. "Sir," whispered Ensign Torres, "the beacon that sent the message just activated some kind of scanning array. It's reading our ship's specifications." Zektar felt his warrior instincts kick in. Whatever was behind those beacons knew they were there and was studying them. In his experience, that usually meant trouble. "All ships yellow alert," he ordered. "Raise shields and prepare weapons, but do not target the beacons unless I give the order." Around him, the bridge crew snapped into action. Warning lights bathed everything in a soft yellow glow as the fleet prepared for potential conflict. "Admiral," Dr. Yilan said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing and reporting to command. If these beacons belong to an unknown civilization, first contact protocols require—" "The Empire doesn't retreat from unknowns, Doctor," Zektar interrupted. "We investigate them." But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his mind. The beacons were clearly ancient, yet they possessed technology advanced enough to scan Imperial ships from a considerable distance. The structures beyond the barrier suggested a civilization with massive industrial capabilities. And the complete absence of these humans from Imperial records meant either they had hidden themselves very well, or someone had gone to great lengths to erase them from galactic history. "Sir," Torres called out urgently, "I'm detecting movement in the star systems beyond the barrier. Several of those dormant structures just activated. On screen." The view screen shifted to show long-range sensor data. In 3 different star systems, massive orbital platforms were coming online. Lights flickered to life along their surfaces and energy readings began to climb. "They know we're here," Zektar said grimly. "Admiral, Vex reported. Imperial Command is ordering us to proceed with the investigation. They want a full report on any technology we discover. Zektar looked at his crew. They were good officers, loyal to the Empire and confident in their abilities. His fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 smaller vessels, more than enough firepower to handle most threats. But the warning beacons and the awakening structures suggested they were dealing with something beyond their experience. "Sir," Dr. Yilan said hesitantly, "the beacons mentioned a treaty. Perhaps whoever built them believed they had an agreement with the Empire. If we violate that agreement, then we deal with the consequences," Zektar replied firmly. "The Empire bows to no unknown treaty." He turned to his navigation officer. "Plot a course through the beacon perimeter. We're going in." "Yes, sir." As the Imperial fleet moved toward the barrier, the warning messages from the beacons grew more frequent and more urgent. The computer translated dozens of different alien languages, all saying the same thing. Turn back, do not enter, violation forbidden. But Admiral Zektar had his orders, and more importantly, he had his pride. The Galactic Empire had never encountered a force it couldn't defeat or absorb. Whatever lay beyond those beacons would soon learn to bow before Imperial might. The first ship crossed the perimeter. The beacons went silent. In the distance, more structures began to wake up. The silence was the first thing Admiral Zektar noticed. As his fleet crossed into the forbidden zone, all the warning signals stopped. The beacons went dark, their ancient voices finally quiet after broadcasting their message for who knows how long, but the silence felt wrong, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Status report," Zektar ordered, trying to shake off his unease. "All ships have crossed the perimeter successfully, sir," reported Lieutenant Vex. "No hostile action detected. The beacons appear to have shut down." "Sir," called Ensign Torres from his sensor station, "I'm reading something strange. The space around us is different." "Explain." Torres frowned at his instruments. "The electromagnetic readings are off. It's like the entire region is being monitored by some kind of passive scanning network. I can't locate the source, but something is definitely watching us." Dr. Yilan moved to her own scanner and confirmed the readings. "Admiral, I'm detecting trace energy signatures throughout this region. Very faint, but they're everywhere. It's as if the space itself has been modified somehow." Zektar studied the main view screen. Ahead of them lay the first star system within the quarantine zone. It contained 7 planets, 3 of which showed signs of having once supported life. Now they appeared dead, their surfaces cold and dark, but orbiting each planet were the massive structures his sensors had detected earlier. "Take us to the nearest structure," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with." As the fleet approached, the true scale of the construction became clear. The structure was a space station unlike anything in Imperial records. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The design was clearly artificial, but it followed no architectural principles that Zektar recognized. "Sir," Torres announced, "the station is functional. I'm reading power signatures throughout the structure, but they're very low level, like it's in some kind of standby mode." "Any signs of life?" "Negative, but sir, there are docking bays large, enough for ships twice the size of our flagship." Dr. Yilan looked up from her analysis. "Admiral, the construction materials include several elements that don't appear in our periodic table. The builders had access to technologies we don't understand." Zektar made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party, full combat gear, we're going aboard." "Sir," Dr. Yilan protested, "first contact protocols require, Doctor, according to our records, whoever built this has been extinct for centuries. This is salvage operation, not first contact." But even as he spoke, Zektar wasn't entirely convinced. The station looked too well maintained to be a derelict. Its hull showed no signs of meteor impacts or cosmic radiation damage. It was as if it had been built yesterday and then put to sleep. The boarding party consisted of 12 Imperial Marines, Dr. Yilan, and 2 technical specialists. They approached the station in a heavily armored shuttle, following standard procedures for investigating unknown vessels. "Sir," the shuttle pilot reported. One of the docking bays is opening. We're being guided in. Guided by what? Unknown, sir. But the bay is pressurizing and extending an atmospheric field. Someone or something wants us to dock. The shuttle settled into the docking bay with barely a vibration. Through the viewports, the boarding party could see that the bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 50 ships their size. But more importantly, it was lit. Soft blue lights ran along the walls and ceiling, providing comfortable illumination. Atmosphere is breathable, reported Corporal Voss, the Marine Squad leader. Gravity is set to standard Imperial levels. Temperature is comfortable. Whoever built this place knew how to make visitors feel welcome. The boarding party left the hour shuttle cautiously, weapons ready. The docking bay was empty except for their ship, but they could see doorways leading deeper into the station. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. Dr. Yilan, can you read any of this? Zektar asked through his communicator. I'm analyzing the symbols now, Admiral. They appear to be... Wait, these aren't just decorations. They're some kind of information display system. I think they're trying to communicate with us. As she spoke, the symbols began to glow brighter. They rearranged themselves into new patterns, becoming simpler and more geometric. After several minutes, they settled into shapes that looked almost like Imperial standard script. Incredible, Dr. Yilan breathed. The system is learning our language in real time. It's analyzing our communication frequencies and adapting. Suddenly, the symbols resolved into clear text. Welcome to Sanctuary Station Alpha 7. Please proceed to Central. Chamber for orientation. The Marines raised their weapons, but Zektar motioned for them to hold. Someone or something is talking to us. Stay alert, but don't fire unless threatened. The boarding party moved deeper into the station, following illuminated pathways that led through corridors wide enough for vehicles. The architecture was beautiful in its simplicity, clean lines, efficient use of space, and a sense of organic flow that made the station feel alive. They encountered no other beings, but the station clearly knew they were there. Doors opened as they approached, lights brightened to guide their path, and the temperature adjusted to keep them comfortable. It was like being welcomed by a gracious but invisible host. The central chamber was a vast spherical room with walkways, extending from multiple levels. At the center, a raised platform held what appeared to be a communication array. As the boarding party entered, the array activated with a soft hum. Light began to gather above the platform, forming the shape of a human woman. She appeared to be middle-aged, with short gray hair and wearing a simple uniform unlike anything in Imperial records. When the hologram solidified, she looked directly at Admiral Zektar and smiled. "Admiral," she said in perfect Imperial standard, "I am Warden Sarah Chen, guardian of the Terran Preserve. You have violated the Sanctuary Accord by entering this space. Please explain your presence here." Zektar stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm. "I am Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Empire. This region of space has no legal standing in Imperial law. We are here to investigate and claim these systems for the Empire." The hologram's expression became sad. "I see. How long has it been since the accord was signed?" "I have no knowledge of any accord," Zektar replied. "Our records show no treaty concerning this region." "Of course they don't," Sarah Chen said softly. "That was part of the agreement. We would remove ourselves from galactic politics completely. All records of our existence would be classified or destroyed. The galaxy would forget about humanity, and in return, we would never interfere in their affairs again." "Humanity went extinct centuries ago," Dr. Yilan interjected. "Our records clearly show." "Your records show what we wanted them to show," the Warden interrupted gently. "Humanity didn't go extinct, Doctor. We chose exile. We removed ourselves from the galactic community because we recognized what we were becoming." "And what was that?" Zektar asked. The hologram was silent for a long moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "We were too good at war, Admiral. Too adaptable. Too dangerous. Every species we encountered either submitted to us or was destroyed by us. We were becoming the very thing we had always fought against, a galactic empire that conquered through superior force. That's exactly what the Galactic Empire is, Zektar pointed out. Yes, Sarah Chen agreed. And we saw what that path led to. We had a choice. Become the dominant species in the galaxy through conquest, or remove ourselves completely and let other species develop without our interference. We chose exile. Dr. Yilan stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. But the scale of these constructions, this level of technology, how many humans are there? Enough, the Warden replied simply. We spent the first century after our exile building the infrastructure you see around you. The second century was devoted to advancing our technology and understanding of the universe. The third century, she paused. The third century was spent preparing for this day. What day? Zektar demanded. The day someone would ignore our warnings and force us to act. We hoped it would never come. We built the beacon network to keep others away, not to threaten them. We wanted nothing more than to be left alone. And now? Zektar asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The Warden looked at him with what might have been pity. Now, we must decide what to do with you. You've seen our stations, our technology. You know we exist. That knowledge threatens the very foundation of our exile. Around them, the station's lights began to pulse in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Zektar could see more lights appearing throughout the star system, hundreds of structures coming online after centuries of dormancy. Admiral, the Warden continued, I'm going to be very clear with you. This conversation is being monitored by every human settlement in the preserve. Right now, they're watching to see what you do next. Some of them think you should be allowed to leave and forget what you've seen. Others believe you represent a threat that must be eliminated. Are you threatening us? Zektar asked, his warrior instincts flaring. I'm explaining the situation, Sarah Chen replied calmly. You have stumbled into something far larger than you understand. The human civilization you thought was extinct has spent 3 centuries becoming something new. We are no longer the species that destroyed itself in civil war. We are something else entirely. And what is that? Dr. Yilan whispered. The Warden smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We are the guardians of our own exile, the Watchers, who make sure that humanity never again threatens the peace of the galaxy, and occasionally we are the response to those who refuse to leave us alone. The lights on the station pulsed faster. In the distance, Zektar could see shapes moving between the stars, ships unlike anything in Imperial designs, graceful and deadly as hunting predators. You have a choice, Admiral, the Warden said. You can take your fleet and leave this space, return to your empire and tell them that the quarantine zone is protected by automated defenses too dangerous to challenge. Your report will be classified, your crew will be transferred to other duties, and eventually the entire incident will be forgotten. And if I refuse? The hologram flickered slightly, as if the Warden was consulting with others. Then we will do what we have always done when faced with a threat to our exile. We will remove the threat. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Zektar looked around at his boarding party. Marines who had never known defeat, scientists eager to unlock new mysteries, officers loyal to the Empire above all else. They were depending on him to make the right decision. I need to consult with my fleet, he said finally. Of course, the Warden replied. But Admiral, understand this. You are the first outsiders to enter Terran space in over 3 centuries. What happens next will determine not just your fate, but the fate of your entire empire. Choose wisely. Admiral Zektar returned to his flagship with his mind racing. The boarding party had left Sanctuary Station without incident, but the Warden's words echoed in his thoughts. As he stood in his private quarters, staring out at the vast space station that dwarfed his entire fleet, he tried to process what he had learned. Humans weren't extinct. They had chosen exile, hiding themselves away for 3 centuries while the galaxy forgot they existed. But why? And more importantly, What had they become during their isolation? A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Lieutenant Vex's voice came through the comm system. Admiral, priority message from Imperial Command. Zektar straightened his uniform and walked to the bridge. The view screen showed the stern face of Grand Admiral Thexera, one of the Emperor's most trusted military leaders. Her species, the Vorthon, were known for their tactical brilliance and absolute loyalty to the Empire. Admiral Zektar, she began without preamble, your initial report has caused quite a stir at command. Unknown alien technology, hidden civilizations, and treaty violations. The Emperor is most interested in your findings. Yes, ma'am, Zektar replied carefully. You are ordered to continue your investigation and secure any advanced technology. For the Empire, a full battle fleet is being dispatched to your location. 10,000 ships under the personal command of Emperor Thaxion himself. Zektar felt his blood run cold. 10,000 ships meant the Empire was taking this threat seriously. It also meant that peaceful withdrawal was no longer an option. Ma'am, I should mention that the inhabitants of this region have expressed a desire for peaceful relations. They claim to have some kind of historical agreement. Admiral, Grand Admiral Thexera interrupted. The Empire recognizes no agreements made without Imperial approval. You will hold your position and wait for reinforcements. That is a direct order from the Emperor. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his doubts. He looked around the bridge at his crew, all of them eager to serve the Empire and expand its boundaries. They trusted him to lead them to victory, just as he had done in dozens of previous campaigns. But something felt different about this situation. The humans hadn't attacked when they had the chance. Instead, they had tried to negotiate to find a peaceful solution. That wasn't the behavior of a typical enemy. Sir, Torres called out from his sensor station. I'm detecting movement throughout the star system. Multiple large objects are changing position. On screen, the view screen showed a tactical display of the entire system. Dozens of structures that had appeared dormant were now moving, repositioning themselves into what looked like defensive formations. The graceful space stations were being joined by massive industrial platforms and what could only be warships. Dr. Hylan, Zektar called. Analysis. The xenobiologist studied the display with obvious fascination. Admiral, this is remarkable. They're not just moving randomly. They're forming a complex three-dimensional defensive grid. Each structure is positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire while maintaining optimal sensor coverage. How long would it take to build formations like that? Zektar asked. With Imperial technology? Months, maybe years, but they're doing it in hours. Their coordination is perfect, like they're all controlled by a single mind. Lieutenant Vex looked up from her communication station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the station we just visited. Put it through. The Warden appeared on the main screen again, her expression more serious than before. Admiral, our sensors have detected a large military buildup in your home territory. It appears your empire is preparing for war. The Empire doesn't make war on those who respect its authority, Zektar replied, though his words sounded hollow even to himself. I see. The Warden paused as if consulting with others. Admiral, I want you to understand something. Humanity spent 3 centuries in exile, not just hiding from the galaxy, but preparing for the day when our isolation might be threatened. We hoped that day would never come. What do you mean preparing? Instead of answering directly, the Warden gestured, and the view screen split to show multiple images. Zektar saw vast shipyards hidden inside asteroids, manufacturing facilities built into the cores of dead planets, and weapon platforms disguised as space debris. We didn't waste our exile, Admiral. Every year brought new advances in technology, new innovations in warfare, new ways to defend ourselves. We became very, very good at surviving. Dr. Yalan gasped as she analyzed the images. Admiral, some of those structures are enormous. That shipyard could build vessels larger than anything in the Imperial fleet. But we built more than ships, the Warden continued. We built a new kind of human civilization, one dedicated to a single purpose, ensuring that humanity never again becomes a threat to galactic peace. By hiding away like cowards? Zektar challenged. The Warden's expression hardened. By becoming something the galaxy has never seen before, a species that chose to limit its own power rather than abuse it. But make no mistake, Admiral, our restraint should not be confused with weakness. The view screen changed to show the edge of the Terran system. A small craft appeared from nowhere, moving at impossible speeds. It was sleek and graceful, unlike the bulky warships of the Imperial fleet. As they watched, it approached one of Zektar's outer patrol ships. "Attention, Imperial vessel," came a calm voice over the communication channel. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Corps. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. This is your final warning." The Imperial patrol ship, a heavily armed cruiser, responded by targeting the small human craft with its weapons. "Unknown vessel, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now or be destroyed." What happened next shocked everyone on Zektar's bridge. The human ship didn't dodge or flee. Instead, it seemed to absorb the Imperial cruiser's energy weapons fire, its hull glowing briefly before reflecting the energy back in a focused beam. The Imperial ship's shields failed instantly, and its weapon systems went offline. "How is that possible?" Torres whispered. The human ship transmitted one more message. "Imperial forces, you have now seen a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." But the Imperial cruiser captain, either brave or foolish, fired again. This time, the human ship's response was different. A pulse of energy struck the Imperial vessel, and suddenly its engines failed. Life support systems flickered. The crew found themselves adrift in space, helpless but alive. "Admiral," the Warden said softly, "our ship could have destroyed your patrol craft in seconds. Instead, we disabled it. That should tell you something about our intentions." Zektar stared at the tactical display. The disabled Imperial cruiser was already being approached by a human rescue vessel. Instead of capturing or destroying the crew, the humans were preparing to offer assistance. "You're not acting like enemies," he said slowly. "Because we're not your enemies, Admiral. We're trying to prevent a tragedy. When your Emperor arrives with his fleet, he'll be expecting to fight a typical alien species. But we're not typical. We're 3 centuries more advanced than when we left galactic society. We've had time to perfect things that other species only dream about." "What things?" "Everything," the Warden replied simply. "Weapons that can turn your own ships against you. Defensive systems that make us nearly impossible to destroy. Manufacturing capabilities that can replace our losses faster than you can inflict them. But most importantly, we've perfected the art of war itself." Dr. Yalan leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "We studied every conflict in human history, every battle ever fought by any species in the galaxy. We learned from every victory and every defeat. We became students of warfare in all its forms, not because we wanted to conquer, but because we wanted to be prepared to defend ourselves." The view screen showed more images. Human soldiers training in environments that replicated dozens of different worlds, scientists developing new technologies at an incredible pace, and massive computer systems analyzing tactical data from thousands of civilizations. "You built an entire culture around warfare?" Zektar asked, horrified and impressed at the same time. "We built an entire culture around survival," the Warden corrected. "The difference is important. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule anyone. We just want to be left alone. But if forced to fight, we will be very good at it." Around them, more human ships were appearing throughout the system. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. They materialized from hiding places in asteroid fields, emerged from camouflaged stations, and seemed to phase into existence from empty space itself. "Where did they all come from?" Torres asked in amazement. "They were always there," the Warden explained. "Cloaked, hidden, waiting. We've had 3 centuries to perfect stealth technology. Most of our fleet has been watching your movements since you crossed our border." Zektar realized the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a hidden colony or a forgotten outpost. This was an entire civilization that had spent 300 years preparing for exactly this moment. "Admiral," Lieutenant Vex reported urgently, Long-range sensors are detecting the Imperial reinforcement fleet. They'll be here in approximately 18 hours. The Warden nodded sadly. We know. Our deep space monitoring stations detected their launch 6 hours ago. 10,000 ships, including the Emperor's personal flagship. They're coming here to conquer us. The Empire has never been defeated, Zektar said, though his voice lacked conviction. The Empire has never fought humanity at full strength, the Warden replied. Admiral, I'm going to make one final offer. Withdraw your fleet now. Return to your Empire and report that this system is protected by automated defenses too dangerous to challenge. Your Emperor will classify the report and forget about us. No one dies, and the galaxy continues in peace. Zektar looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about the disabled Imperial cruiser, about the thousands of hidden human ships, about 3 centuries of preparation for war, but he also thought about his oath to the Empire, his duty to his crew, and his orders from the Emperor himself. I can't, he said finally. My orders are to hold position and wait for reinforcements. The Warden looked at him with something that might have been pity. Then I'm sorry, Admiral. You've seen what we can do to a single ship. When your Emperor arrives, he'll see what we can do to a fleet. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his choices. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly, preparing for the battle they all knew was coming. But in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that they might be preparing for something much worse than a battle. They might be preparing for a massacre. The Imperial reinforcement fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fire. 10,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Terran system, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant star. At their head was the Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a massive dreadnought that could destroy entire worlds. Admiral Zektar watched the arrival from his bridge, feeling both relief and dread. Relief because he was no longer alone in facing the mysterious humans. Dread because he suspected that even this massive force might not be enough. Sir, Lieutenant Vex reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Emperor's ship. Put it through. The viewscreen filled with the imposing figure of Emperor Thaxion himself. He was a member of the Draconian species, tall and powerful, with scales that shimmered like dark metal. His yellow eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Admiral Zektar, the Emperor's voice rumbled across the bridge. Report. Your Majesty, we have encountered a previously unknown human civilization in this system. They claim this region as their territory under some kind of ancient treaty, but they have shown advanced technology beyond our current understanding. Humans? The Emperor's expression showed surprise. Our records indicate that species went extinct centuries ago. That appears to be incorrect, Your Majesty. They claim to have chosen exile rather than extinction. They've spent the last 3 centuries developing their technology and building defensive systems. Emperor Thaxion studied the tactical displays showing the human formations. How many ships are we facing? Unknown, sir. Their stealth capabilities are extremely advanced. We estimate several thousand vessels, but there could be more. Several thousand against 10,000 Imperial ships? The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Admiral, you've been frightened by shadows. We'll sweep these humans aside like dust. But even as the Emperor spoke, his tactical officers were analyzing the sensor data. What they saw made them uneasy. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, their formations shifting like living things. More importantly, their technology readings were completely alien. Your Majesty, one of the tactical officers reported hesitantly, the enemy vessels are showing energy signatures we don't recognize. Their defensive systems appear to be unusual. Unusual how? They seem to be able to absorb and redirect energy, sir. When Admiral Zektar's patrol ship fired on one of their vessels, the energy was reflected back with increased intensity. The Emperor's confidence wavered slightly, but his pride remained intact. New technology can be overcome with superior numbers. Prepare the fleet for attack. But before he could give the order, a new contact appeared on their sensors. A single, Small ship was approaching the Imperial fleet, broadcasting a request for parley. Your Majesty, the communication officer reported, the incoming vessel is requesting permission to come aboard. They say they have a representative who wishes to speak with you directly. Emperor Thaxion considered this. In his long reign, many enemies had tried to negotiate when faced with the full might of the Imperial fleet. Usually, it was because they knew they couldn't win. Permission granted, but maintain full alert status. The human shuttle was unlike anything in Imperial designs. It moved with fluid grace, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. It docked with the Eternal Dominion without any difficulty, despite using technology completely different from Imperial systems. The representative who emerged from the shuttle was an elderly human male with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore simple clothing, not the elaborate uniforms favored by most galactic diplomats. 2 Imperial guards escorted him to the Emperor's throne room, where Thaxion waited surrounded by his most trusted advisors. Your Imperial Majesty, the human said with a respectful bow, I am Ambassador Marcus Webb of the Terran Preserve Council. I come to speak with you about preventing a tragedy. The only tragedy here, the Emperor replied, will be what happens to your people when they refuse to submit to Imperial authority. Marcus Webb looked around the throne room, taking in the displays of Imperial power and conquest. Banners from 100 conquered worlds hung from the walls, and the floor was made from rare metals taken from subjugated planets. Your Majesty, he said finally, may I ask how long the Galactic Empire has ruled? Over 3,000 years, Thaxion answered proudly. We have brought order and civilization to countless worlds. And in all that time, have you ever encountered a species that voluntarily removed itself from galactic politics rather than submit to your rule? The Emperor frowned. No species has ever been given that option. Exactly, Webb said softly. Every species you've encountered has either submitted or been destroyed. But humanity chose a third path. We recognized what we were becoming and chose to exile ourselves rather than compete with you for galactic dominance. And now you think, to challenge us from your hiding place? We don't want to challenge you, Your Majesty. We want to continue our exile in peace. But if you force us to defend ourselves, you should understand what that means. Emperor Thaxion leaned forward on his throne. Enlighten me. Webb gestured, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed star charts, technical specifications, and battle analyses that made the Imperial advisors gasp in surprise. For 3 centuries, humanity has studied war, Webb explained. Not because we love it, but because we feared this day might come. We've analyzed every conflict in galactic history, including your own campaigns. We've learned from your victories and your defeats. Impossible, one of the Imperial generals protested. Our military records are classified. Nothing is classified. From someone who has 300 years to work on the problem, Webb replied. We've infiltrated your networks, studied your tactics, analyzed your technology. We know how your ships are built, how your commanders think, how your empire operates. The holographic display shifted to show detailed schematics of Imperial warships, complete with structural weak points and tactical vulnerabilities. The Emperor's advisors recognized their own classified designs. This is espionage of the highest order, the Emperor growled. This is survival, Webb corrected. We needed to understand our potential enemies in order to defend against them. But, Your Majesty, knowledge works both ways. Just as we learned about you, we learned about ourselves. What do you mean? Webb's expression grew sad. We learned that humans are very, very good at war, perhaps too good. In our exile, we've had time to perfect abilities that we once used to destroy each other. We've become something that no species in the galaxy has ever faced. And what is that? The Emperor asked, though part of him already dreaded the answer. A species that has spent 3 centuries preparing for a single battle, Webb replied. Every human in our space has been trained from birth to defend our exile. Every ship has been built with lessons learned from studying galactic warfare. Every weapon has been designed to counter the specific tactics used by Imperial forces. The holographic display showed images of human training facilities, manufacturing centers, and weapon testing sites. The scale was staggering, an entire civilization dedicated to military preparation. But more than that, Webb continued, we've learned to work together in ways that other species never could. Humans in exile don't compete with each other. We cooperate completely. Every human in our space is connected to every other human through quantum communication networks. We think as one, act as one, fight as one. Emperor Thaxion stood up from his throne, his powerful form towering over the human ambassador. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to save you, Your Majesty, Webb replied calmly. And your empire, and my people. If this battle happens, it will be unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. We don't want that. Then surrender. Webb shook his head sadly. We can't do that. Our exile is the only thing preventing humanity from becoming what we once feared we might become. A conquering force that spreads across the galaxy, destroying everything in its path. If we surrender to you, if we rejoin galactic civilization, that restraint will be gone. You speak as if you have a choice in the matter. Everyone has a choice, Your Majesty. You can withdraw your fleet and respect our exile, or you can attack and face the consequences. But understand this, if you attack us, you won't just be fighting a few thousand human ships. You'll be fighting the focused will of an entire species that has spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. The Emperor looked at his advisors, seeing doubt in their eyes for the first time in years. They had studied the sensor readings, analyzed the human formations, and recognized technology far beyond their current understanding. How do I know you're not bluffing? Thaxion asked. Webb activated a small device on his wrist. Immediately, every screen in the throne room filled with images from throughout the Imperial fleet. The humans had somehow infiltrated every ship's communication system simultaneously. Your Majesty, Webb said as the images showed the interior of dozens of Imperial vessels, this is not a bluff. Right now, we are inside your ship's computer systems. We are monitoring your communications, tracking your movements, analyzing your weapons. If we wanted to, we could disable your entire fleet without firing a shot. The Emperor's guards raised their weapons, but Webb held up his hands peacefully. We're not here to harm you, he said. We're here to show you what we're capable of, so you'll understand why continuing this confrontation would be a tragedy for everyone involved. Emperor Thaxion stared at the screens showing his own ships being monitored by human technology. His pride warred with his growing realization that these humans were unlike any enemy he had ever faced. What do you propose? He asked finally. Withdraw your fleet, Webb said simply. Classify this entire incident, forget you ever found us. In return, we'll continue our exile and never interfere in galactic affairs again. And if I refuse? Webb's expression grew infinitely sad. Then we'll do what we've been preparing to do for 300 years. We'll defend our exile with everything we have. And Your Majesty, after 3 centuries of preparation, we have become very good at defense. The throne room fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Outside, 10,000 Imperial warships waited for orders, while thousands of human vessels prepared for battle. Emperor Thaxion looked at the displays showing his compromised fleet, at the ambassador who spoke of cooperation and exile, at the advisors who no longer met his eyes with complete confidence. For the first time in his long reign, he faced an enemy that didn't want to fight him, and that terrified him more than any threat ever had. Emperor Thaxion stared at Ambassador Webb for a long moment, his yellow eyes burning with the fury of a ruler who had never been challenged. The throne room was silent except for the soft hum of ship systems and the barely contained breathing of his advisors. No, he said finally, his voice echoing off the metal walls. The Galactic Empire does not retreat. We do not negotiate with unknowns. And we certainly do not bow to the demands of a species that should have remained extinct. Webb's shoulders sagged slightly as if he had expected this answer but hoped it wouldn't come. Your Majesty, please reconsider. What happens next cannot be undone. What happens next the Emperor declared, rising from his throne, is that your people learn what it means to defy Imperial might. Guards escort this ambassador back to his ship, then prepare the fleet for immediate attack. As Webb was led away, he activated his wrist device one final time. Throughout the Imperial fleet, every communication system briefly displayed the same message. Sanctuary protocol terminated. Threat level, extinction event, authorization, full release. Admiral Zektar, watching from his own bridge, felt a chill run down his spine as he read those words. Around him, his crew prepared for battle with the confidence of soldiers who had never known defeat. But Zektar remembered the Warden's warnings, the disabled patrol ship, and the ambassador's sad certainty. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex reported, "the Emperor is ordering all ships to attack formation. We're to begin bombardment of the nearest human installations." "Acknowledged," Zektar replied, though his heart wasn't in it. Across the Terran system, the human response was immediate and coordinated. The scattered formations of ships suddenly moved with perfect synchronization, like a single organism responding to danger. Defensive platforms that had seemed dormant blazed to life with energy signatures that made Imperial sensors scream warnings. "All ships," came the Emperor's voice across the fleet communication system. "Attack at will. Show these humans the price of defying the Empire." The first wave of Imperial ships, over 1,000 heavy cruisers, launched their attack. Energy beams and missile barrages filled the space between the two fleets with deadly light. It was a display of firepower that had destroyed entire civilizations. But the human ships didn't respond the way enemies were supposed to. They didn't scatter or try to dodge. Instead, they seemed to absorb the incoming fire, their hulls glowing briefly before redirecting the energy back at the Imperial fleet, with devastating accuracy. "What the hell?" Torres gasped from his sensor station as he watched Imperial ships being struck by their own weapons fire. The reflected attacks were surgical in their precision. Instead of destroying the Imperial vessels, they targeted specific systems, weapons, engines, life support. Within minutes, hundreds of Imperial ships found themselves drifting helplessly in space, their crews alive, but their ships disabled. "Con. Wave advance," the Emperor ordered, refusing to believe what his sensors were telling him. But the second wave fared no better. The human ships moved with impossible grace, seeming to phase in and out of normal space. They appeared behind Imperial formations, struck with weapons that bypassed shields entirely, then vanished before return fire could reach them. And then the truly horrifying part began. Some of the disabled Imperial ships suddenly came back online, but they weren't under Imperial control anymore. "Sir," Torres called out in panic, "the disabled ships are targeting us. Their systems have been compromised." Admiral Zektar watched in horror as Imperial vessels turned their weapons on their own fleetmates. But even worse, he could hear the communications between the compromised ships. The crews weren't being harmed. They were being forced to watch as their own ships fired on their allies. "This is impossible," one of his tactical officers whispered. "How are they controlling our ships?" The answer came in the form of a fleet-wide broadcast from the human forces. Ambassador Webb's face appeared on every screen in the Imperial fleet, but his expression was no longer sad. It was determined. "Imperial forces," he announced. "You are witnessing a demonstration of what humanity became during our exile. We didn't just develop better weapons or stronger ships. We learned to turn your own technology against you." As he spoke, more Imperial vessels found their systems compromised. But the human takeovers were selective. They disabled weapons targeting human ships while leaving life support and communications intact. "Every ship in your fleet contains technology developed from principles we abandoned centuries ago," Webb continued. "Your computers use logic systems we invented. Your weapons are based on physics we explored. Your communications networks follow protocols we established. We didn't just learn about your technology, we built the foundations it rests on." Emperor Thaxion's voice crackled across the fleet channels. "All ships fall back to Formation 7. Prepare for coordinated assault." But as the Imperial ships tried to regroup, they discovered that their coordination was being disrupted. "Orders were being intercepted and modified. Navigation systems were providing false readings. Ships that tried to target human vessels found their weapon systems mysteriously malfunctioning. This is cybernetic warfare on a scale never seen before, Dr. Yelan observed from her station. They're not just jamming our systems, they're rewriting them in real time. The human fleet, meanwhile, moved with perfect coordination. Every ship seemed to know exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. Their attacks were precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy, showing a level of tactical sophistication that the Empire had never encountered. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't their technology. It was their restraint. With every passing minute, it became clear that the humans could have destroyed the entire Imperial fleet within the first few minutes of battle. Instead, they were choosing to disable ships, capture rather than kill, demonstrate rather than annihilate. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex reported with barely contained panic, "we're receiving casualty reports from across the fleet. But sir, there are no casualties. The humans aren't killing anyone." Admiral Zektar stared at the tactical display. Over half the Imperial fleet was now disabled or under human control, but every single crew member was alive. The humans were fighting a war with the goal of winning without deaths. What kind of enemy fights like this? He wondered aloud. The answer came from an unexpected source. The Warden appeared on his personal communication screen, her expression grave but not hostile. "The kind of enemy that doesn't want to be your enemy," she said simply. "Admiral, your Emperor refused our final offer of peace. Now we must show him why that was a mistake. But we will not become murderers to prove our point." Around them, the battle continued, if it could even be called a battle. The Imperial fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Ships found themselves trapped in tractor beams they couldn't see, struck by weapons they couldn't track, controlled by systems they couldn't understand. "How?" Zektar asked. "How are you doing?" "This? 300 years of preparation," the Warden replied. 300 years of every human mind focused on a single goal, defending our exile. We studied every aspect of warfare, every possible scenario, every conceivable enemy. We became something the galaxy has never seen, a species that treats war as a science to be perfected. On the main tactical display, Emperor Thaxion's flagship found itself surrounded by human vessels. But instead of attacking, they simply waited. The message was clear. The Emperor's life was in their hands, and they were choosing to spare it. "Your Emperor has a choice," the Warden continued. "He can continue this hopeless battle and watch his entire fleet be captured without firing an effective shot. Or he can accept that some things are more powerful than Imperial pride." As if summoned by her words, Ambassador Webb appeared again on the fleet-wide communication system. But this time, he was standing on the bridge of the Emperor's own flagship. "Your Majesty," Webb said, speaking directly to Thaxion, "your ship's defenses have been bypassed, your crew is unharmed, and your personal guards are wondering why their weapons won't function. I'm standing on your bridge to demonstrate that. We could have killed you at any point during this engagement. We chose not to." The Emperor, surrounded by human soldiers who had somehow materialized on his most secure ship, looked older than his years. "What do you want?" "The same thing we've always wanted," Webb replied. "To be left alone. Your Majesty, in the past hour, you've seen what 3 centuries of human development can accomplish. But this was just a demonstration. We held back because we don't want to hurt anyone. You've humiliated the greatest fleet in galactic history," Thaxion said bitterly. "We've shown you why our exile was necessary," Webb corrected. "Humanity didn't go into hiding because we were weak. We went into hiding because we were too strong. What you've seen today is what we become when forced to defend ourselves. Imagine what we might become if we decided to expand into the galaxy again." The Emperor looked around his bridge at the human soldiers who had appeared like ghosts. They carried weapons he didn't recognize, wore armor that seemed to bend light around it, and moved with the precision of a perfectly coordinated military unit. "You're not like other species," he said slowly. "No, Your Majesty, we're not. We're the species that chose to limit our own power rather than abuse it. But that choice only works if others respect our exile. Throughout the Imperial fleet, disabled, ships were being returned to Imperial control, their systems restored but their weapons permanently disabled. Human medical ships were already moving among the damaged vessels, offering aid to injured Imperial crews. "What happens now?" Emperor Thaxion asked. Webb smiled sadly. "Now you go home. You classify this entire incident. You add your own warnings to our beacon network. You tell the galaxy that this region of space is protected by automated defenses too dangerous to challenge. And you forget you ever met us." "And if I refuse?" "Then we'll have to find a more permanent solution to the problem of Imperial expansion," Webb said simply. "Your Majesty, you've seen what we can do when we hold back. Don't force us to show you what we can do when we don't." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, surrounded by enemies who had defeated his fleet without killing a single crew member. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. But this isn't over." "Yes, Your Majesty," Webb said gently. "It is. Because now you understand what we really are. And you understand why the galaxy is safer with us in exile." Hours later, the Imperial fleet limped away from Terran space, their pride shattered but their lives intact. Behind them, the human ships faded back into the darkness, becoming invisible once again. Admiral Zektar, standing on his bridge and watching the ancient warning beacons reactivate, finally understood their message. They weren't threats, they were protection. Protection for the galaxy from a species that had become too dangerous to be free. The warning beacons resumed their eternal broadcast, but now they were joined by new signals from Imperial frequencies. "Forbidden, Terran quarantine zone. Enter at your own peril. Some doors should never be opened." In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The knowledge that humanity watched from the shadows tempered conflicts between species. Wars became rarer, negotiations more common. The great powers learned to settle their differences peacefully, knowing that somewhere, in the dark, patient guardians waited to intervene if civilization threatened to destroy itself. And in Terran space, humanity returned to its voluntary exile, forever vigilant, forever ready, forever hoping that the galaxy would learn to be better than they themselves once were. The quarantine held, and the galaxy was safer for it.